Well, it's another 3-game week in a championship. Well, for most sides anyway, after a storm caused a bit of chaos on Friday. And we are back to predict the midweek fixtures for matchday 13 in his 23-24 championship season. We're going to look ahead to all 12 scheduled games this midweek and have a quick chat about how we expect them to go, as well as predicting our scorelines. We'll encourage you to do the same in the comments as always. Let me know your scores, and if you beat or match mine, which is happening a lot at the minute, you will get a shout out in the next recap. So we're going to crack on with our matchday 13 predictions in a moment, but for now, we've got to have a quick recap of matchday 12 because at the weekend, for the second time in a row, it's been a bad weekend for me. And basically, it hinges on two games because I went for my two surprises of the weekend, my two little shock score lines at Watford and Huddersfield, and neither of them came off. And not only did they not come off, they were fairly low scoring home wins, which meant a lot of you made ground on me in those matches. Otherwise though, to be honest, it was a fairly low scoring weekend across the board. Only 3 people made double figures, and a few of you even got less than my score of 5 points, which looked like it was going to be greater at the start of the weekend. We had a perfect start with the 1-1 draw on Saturday lunchtime between Preston and Millwall. Was the only one I went for, and to be fair, it was actually the only 1-1 this weekend. But aside from that, I only managed to pick up 2 points with the 1-0 wins for Middlesbrough and for Blackburn. Middlesbrough taking their chances, I might have got 3 there. But overall, a poor weekend for me, a frustrating one to be brutally honest with you. And for many of you, not great scores across the board, but of course enough to beat my dismal one. So let's work in reverse order, starting with Alex, who matched me on 5. Good effort, but again, perfect scores just eluding you there. 8 points, we've got quite a few of you. Now, Mitchell and RZL I'll group together because you both got Preston as your perfect score as well. The 1-1 draw against Millwall. Calvin got 8 points with Huddersfield being the perfect prediction. Peter got 8 as well, but with Watford being the perfect call. And then 2 people on 8 with double perfect scores. BPK got Watford and Huddersfield. Mello got Watford and Leeds with that brilliant call for the 3-2 win at Norwich. Aksha got 9 with Watford being the perfect score there as well. And then we move into the double figures. W&G fan, you got 10 with Leicester and Huddersfield, your perfect scores. But the joint winners on 11 this week, Dan and Tony. Dan, you got Preston and Southampton right. Tony, you got Bristol City and Southampton. So well done to both of you with 11. Matchday 12, a frustrating one and one to forget for me. So let's go and move on to matchday 13 because this midweek promises to be a pretty interesting one. And we start on Tuesday night with Huddersfield Town versus Cardiff City. Darren Moore picking up his first win in charge of Huddersfield. That a 2-1 win at home to QPR. Possibly not the best performance we've seen, but at the moment against QPR, quite frankly, it doesn't always have to be. QPR did have more of the ball, did have more of the chances, but you've got to say Huddersfield took theirs. And at the moment, they are picking up points and pushing up the table, which is crucial at this stage of the season. For Cardiff, a frustrating 1-0 defeat away at Blackburn was actually a pretty poor game because we normally see Blackburn have and concede loads of chances. But it was a relatively quiet one. In the end, Cardiff did give up probably the best 2 chances in a match. And in the end, maybe just about deserved to be edged out. But it is a game between two sides who, despite being in mid-table at the moment, I do feel will be on the outskirts of that relegation battle this year. And I know that both sides so far have proven that wrong. Cardiff have only picked up 4 points on the road. They've not scored many goals either, just 1 a game in average. And Huddersfield, much the same problem at home. 8 points, not a great record overall. And to be fair, they don't score many at home either. So I don't think this is going to be a thrilling game. I don't think it's going to be high quality. I do think it might be decided by mistakes, if I'm being honest. But I'm going to go for Darren Moore to get a bit of momentum just to edge this game. If Cardiff had been at home, I probably would have edged for them. I think it's as simple as that. So Huddersfield to nick this one by 2-1. But not exact science behind that. As we move on to the side that beat Cardiff City on Saturday, as Blackburn Rovers travel to managerless Millwall, I think most neutrals like me were probably pretty surprised when Gary Rowett left by mutual consent last week. But Millwall did manage to pick up a point against Preston in spite of that. A 1-1 draw continues their pretty average start to the season. They're only 3 points off the playoffs, it's hardly a disaster. And it's probably a pretty attractive job thanks to the work that Rowett has done. For Blackburn, it's back-to-back victories, very different methods of getting them. A gritty 1-0 win against Cardiff, as we mentioned. Couple of good chances, but not the best game. but crucially for Blackburn, back-to-back clean sheets after that thumping of QPR before the break. What does worry me is that they have conceded goals and chances galore when they've played against some of the better sides in the league this year. And Millwall, despite their average start, can be one of theirs at their best. Of course, we never know. They might have a new manager in by Tuesday and have a big bounce at the Den. But for this game, it's going to be very tight. I think it's going to be pretty cagey. Blackburn will have to set up a bit more carefully. They're going to have to defend set pieces and crosses better than they have at times this season. I think this is going to be low scoring, and I'm trying to learn from the mistakes I've made at the weekend. I'm going to go for Millwall to edge this at home. I'm going for a classic 1-0 win at the Den. Let's move on to a side that was subject of a stunning comeback from their old manager at the weekend. It is Norwich City versus Middlesbrough. Norwich were, well, just stunned and shocked, weren't they? 2-0 up at half-time against Leeds, battered in the second half, and a couple of very good goals helped turn that around, in addition to Shane Duffy's own goal. You've got to say Norwich played well for 45 minutes, but how many times have we talked about it this year? Defensive frailties are a problem. Losing Omobamidele on deadline day, losing Max Aarons late in the window. They've just not quite got that settled defence at the moment. And of course, it wasn't helped by the fact that they lost their goalkeeper in the first half at the weekend. Without that, maybe it would have been a slightly different game. Not many goals coming from the strikers at the moment without Sargent too. So a few worries for Norwich after a pretty good start on paper. But Middlesbrough, much the opposite. A shocking start. Now they are flying. They're up to 13th. They're 2 points off the playoffs. And in all competitions, it is 6 wins in a row. They had to wait till late against Birmingham. A 1-0 win late on courtesy of Morgan Rogers. But that doesn't reflect the game at all. They were brilliant. They dominated Birmingham. They had 3 or 4 glorious chances. They should have won by more. And my perfect score would have been intact if they managed to take all their clear-cut chances. But it's not to be. It was still a win. And Middlesbrough are looking really good. I do feel at the moment that Middlesbrough have to be the favourites for this game because they're keeping clean sheets, they're creating chances. Norwich are doing not really either of those things. So I'm not going to go for a big convincing win. And I do feel Norwich might nick a goal still because they are scoring in every game. They've got a bit of a threat. Probably not going to come from the strikers, but Borough are going to have too much and they're going to be given too many chances. So I'm going to go for them to nick an away win. Keep the good run going under Michael Carrick and to win at Carrow Road by 2-1. Let's move on to the fourth game where Swansea City face Watford. Swansea had been in great form until coming up against Leicester at the weekend and they went the same way as almost everyone. They actually were in the game for a while and they did compete, but later in that second half we just saw it get away a little bit. And you look at the quality Leicester have got on the bench with the likes of Iheanacho coming on and scoring. There's not many teams in the Championship that can compete with that. Swansea gave them a game, but it wasn't to be in the end. For Watford, a win, which was crucial, and 3 points on the board is great. But is it enough to get excited about? They slipped past Sheffield Wednesday, who are bottom of the league without a win. Yes, dealt with the new manager bounce better than I thought, but he did give up a glorious chance, and if it had been taken, it would have been a 1-1 draw and a very disappointing day. We now move on to the fact that Watford are away from home. They've only picked up 2 points on the road this season. They're yet to get an away win. Swansea at home in recent games beat Sheffield Wednesday far more convincingly. Also beat Norwich at home last time out as well. And actually, despite the Swansea defeat, I still feel they're in a pretty good place, to be honest. So I'm going to go for Swansea to win this. I think it's a pretty comfortable one on paper. Watford have actually struggled for goals on the road recently, just 1 in their last 3 away matches. So I'm going to go for Swansea to keep a clean sheet and to win this one by 2-0. Let's move on to the table toppers. Leicester City face Sunderland. It's now an 11-point gap between Leicester and third place. A Premier League return already starting to look inevitable perhaps. Are they going to do what Burnley did last year? Well, they didn't show any signs of slowing down as they come to face Sunderland off the back of a 3-1 win at Swansea. It was a good effort from them in a game that was competitive, but as we mentioned, when you can bring that level of quality off the bench, you're always going to have a threat when people are chasing the game. So I'd imagine when Leicester get the first goal in matches, we're not going to see them throw away points this year. On the flip side of that, Sunderland have had a tricky couple of weeks and they were disappointing against Alex Neil's Stoke. Now, Sunderland probably did create slightly more chances overall, but Stoke created maybe the better ones. Sunderland didn't open Stoke up as much as we've seen, based on the extended highlights anyway. And for this one, I know Sunderland have got a very good away record generally, but Leicester surely have to be favourites. There is a part of me that thinks, oh, maybe they could go and nick a draw. Maybe they could take the game to them. I do feel it's a dangerous game for Leicester, given the matchup of styles, but I've been so impressed with Leicester this season. They've proved me wrong at the ease of which they've adapted to the Championship. I'm going to go for their favourite scoreline from the start of the season. Leicester City to nick this one, a close game by 2-1. And the final game on Tuesday is probably a home banker to many. It is West Bromwich Albion versus Queen's Park Rangers. QPR lost 2-1 away at Huddersfield. They are now 4 points adrift in the relegation zone. Whereas for West Brom, bit of a frustrating day to be honest. A 0-0 draw against a Plymouth side that struggled to keep clean sheets. And again, had more of it, but without creating many glorious chances. Only managing 2 shots on target again. And it's the same problem we've seen from West Brom for a long time. Lots of good creative midfield players, lots of chances being created in matches, but no real sign of taking them. For QPR, it's just a calamity at the minute. 10 conceded in their last 4, only a couple scored. And you do feel that Gareth Ainsworth is starting to lose the dressing room. I hate to say it because he was a great player for them and has been brilliant at Wickham and probably did deserve time and a chance to overhaul his squad. There are bigger problems at QPR than what's happening on the pitch, but you can't legislate for some of the mistakes being made. They did actually play better against Huddersfield. We've got to say that in fairness. It had to be a reaction after the Blackburn game, but overall, you have to say they're in trouble, and I do worry that they might be on the slide here. They're going to need a very big performance in midweek, and I don't think it's coming. I'm going to stick my neck on the line here. I'll say West Brom will take their chances. They'll win comfortably by 3-0, and we might have another manager special on the horizon. I hope not, but it's starting to look inevitable, unfortunately. Let's move on to Wednesday night, and we start with a side who are unbeaten at home this season. It's their first home game under a new manager. It is Wayne Rooney's Birmingham City against Hull City. Both sides lost narrowly at the weekend. Let's be honest here, Borough should have battered Birmingham because they had 3 or 4 glorious chances. Birmingham created very little. And Wayne Rooney's side probably fortunate in the end to come out with a 1-0 defeat. For Hull, a competitive game against Southampton, a 2-1 defeat in the end at home, a 95th minute goal, a kick in the teeth, but Southampton maybe did just edge the game and they're starting to find form again. So not a disaster for Hull. They're probably about where we expected them to be. They're still only 2 points off the playoffs. It's not a bad start to the season, but this game becomes a pretty crucial one. We've got Wayne Rooney looking for a first home win and to continue that form we saw under John Eustace. 3-1 and 4-1 in their last 2 home games. This is a tricky test though, because Hull have picked up more of their points on the road this season. They've been a big goal threat on the road as well. I've got a feeling this is going to be a draw, I'll be honest with you here. There's not really many of us who know what to expect from Rooney's side at home. We don't know whether we're going to see a continuation of the form under Eustace or whether it's going to be a bit different. Not sure we saw the no-fear football at Middlesbrough, but it's too early to judge on that. I'm going to stick my neck on the line with a Championship's favourite scoreline. It had to come along at some point. I'm going to go for 1 goal apiece. Let's move on to the next game, which is Bristol City versus Ipswich. Ipswich obviously didn't play at the weekend. Their game on Friday night was called off at Rotherham due to flooding. However, Bristol City did play, and they've continued their trend, along with Stoke, of being the most unpredictable teams in the Championship. They won 1-0 at home to Coventry in what was a really solid display defensively. Coventry had no great chances in the game, and while it wasn't a brilliant performance, Bristol City gave up the ball, they hit on the counter, and they used set pieces. They played to their strengths, and they did really well at it. So you have to give credit to them. They're an impossible side to predict, but they're up in that playoff mix at the moment. And that makes this midweek difficult because normally with Bristol City, if they've won their last game, you don't predict them to win the next one. I'm not going to do that here. Ipswich, as we mentioned in the last episode, they are very goal heavy at home, but away from home, they've actually been in quite tight games. So I'm going to stick my neck on the line again with this one. And I'm going to go for another Championship's favourite scoreline because I don't fancy Bristol City to produce 2 great performances in a row. And Ipswich playing a bit more cautiously on the road, I could see this game almost petering out. Might even be a 0-0. 1 goal either way, but I'm going to go for 1 goal apiece because I've got a feeling there's going to be a few Championship's favourite scorelines this match day. Let's go and move on to a game where I have not predicted that. It is Plymouth Argyle versus Sheffield Wednesday. Last season's League One champions v last season's League One playoff champions. But boy, have they had different starts to the season. Plymouth averaging a point a game just outside the relegation zone at the minute. A good 0-0 draw away at West Brom again restricted them to not a huge amount, and a clean sheet is a great effort after some of their recent defensive displays. At home generally, they have offered a lot of a threat going forward. They've scored lots of goals, they've also conceded a fair few. For Sheffield Wednesday, the goals are hard to come by. New manager, but no new energy in front of goal. It is 5 matches without a single goal. A late defeat, 1-0 away at Watford, who were also struggling at the time. Maybe a bit of an indicator of what we're going to expect on Wednesday night. They did have a great chance, Sheffield Wednesday, which they didn't take. And they were better in terms of their general structure. But putting together a side that has got anywhere near the level to compete for survival is looking some way off at the minute, if we're being honest. So I'm going to go for Plymouth to win this game. I just feel it's going to be a nightmare for Wednesday. Plymouth are high energy. Plymouth are everything Danny Roll probably wants his side to be. And I feel they'll have too much going forward. I wouldn't be shocked if I'm wrong on the scoreline, because I can see Plymouth perhaps conceding. I'm going to go for them to win this comfortably. I'm going to go by 2-0, but don't be shocked if it's 2 or 3-1. 3 games to go, and we start with 4th v 5th. It is Preston North End versus Southampton. Preston a 1-1 draw at home to Millwall, their first draw at home this season, and Southampton that 95th minute winner away from home at Hull City. You've got to be fair, they've bounced back well from a very sticky spell. Russell Martin has ridden out the storm, and a win away at Hull, it's a pretty good result in anyone's books, to be fair. Hilarious stat of the day, these two sides in the playoffs both have a negative goal difference, shows how badly they've been beaten in some of the games they have, and again makes it unpredictable, because if either of these have an off day, it could be an absolute stinker of a match. Preston haven't won in 5 now after their brilliant start, but much better defensive signs against Millwall, albeit a managerless Millwall that didn't offer huge threats throughout. And Southampton unbeaten in 4. Again, most of the games have been close, bar that freak one against Leeds. I really don't know what to go for here. I was tempted by 1-1. I was thinking about a 2-1 either way perhaps, but I feel Southampton are going to keep the ball a lot. Preston are going to sit really deep, really cautious, play like an away game. And I think they'll cancel each other out for the most part. But then it's whether there's a moment of quality at either end. I am so convinced in my head that this game will end 1-0. I don't know who to. I've opted for Preston. I just feel by the law of averages, it's going to be the surprise of the midweek. A team that hasn't won in 5 against a team that isn't losing, you've got to go for the surprise result. But I'm convinced it'll be 1-0. I'm opting for Preston. I'm sure a few in the comments will go the other way. Let's move on to the penultimate game, which is Rotherham United versus Coventry City. Rotherham, of course, as we mentioned, didn't play on Friday due to the storm. But Coventry on Saturday, well, they might be wishing they didn't, because their 4-game unbeaten run came to an end as they lost away from home at Bristol City. It was a pretty poor performance, and those more encouraging attacking signs from recent weeks, they dried up very quickly, didn't they? Not a great start away from home for Coventry this season, but again, even in 16th place, they're 4 points off the playoffs. They're in a better position than they were this time last year, and they ended up in the playoff final that time around. However, I'm looking at the other side here. Rotherham have got to get home results. Almost all of their points have come at the New York Stadium. If they're at their best, we know they can be a frightening prospect. They've got a bit of quality in the team, and they do seem to be enjoying their home comfort significantly more than any trips on the road. Again, this one could go either way. If either side's out of form, I wouldn't be particularly shocked to see a 2-1 victory, but I'm going for my Championship's favourite scoreline again. I said there'll be a few this week, and I'm hoping they're all going to be on Wednesday night. Rotherham 1, Coventry 1. Coventry need to bounce back. And Rotherham, we don't really know what to expect because they didn't play at the weekend. Let's move on to the final game, and 2 teams and 2 managers that had brilliant success against their former club. For Stoke City versus Leeds United, we've got the battle of Alex Neil v Daniel Farke. Alex Neil had a lovely time against his former club Sunderland, and Daniel Farke had an emotional day at Norwich, I think. 2-0 down at half-time. We mentioned the Norwich goalkeeping injury, which did make a difference earlier on. But if we're being honest about it, Leeds were fantastic second half, and going forward, they look like they've got a real threat. They've got lots of people who can pop up with a goal, who can create something out of nothing, and produce individual magic, which is the thing that a lot of sides in the Championship don't have. They've moved up to 3rd place now, and with Ipswich having that game in hand, they'll be thinking they can put pressure on by getting points. For Stoke, a very good win at home to Sunderland, a good performance, and to be fair, they have produced the odd one at home this year. But the worry is always going to be defensively with them, because they haven't looked great at the back. They're conceding goals galore. 3 at Hull, 2 at Bristol City. 2 against Leicester and 1 against Southampton and Sunderland. I mean, we've got to be fair as well and say it's been a horrible run of fixtures for Stoke, but Leeds United are finding form after a slow start, and I cannot see anything other than a Leeds United victory. Stoke don't draw at home, so I'm ruling that one out of the equation. I'm going to go for Leeds to win. I'm going to go for them to have too much going forward, and while Stoke are a difficult team to predict, I'm going for Leeds to win by 3-1. So with that out of the way, let's have a quick recap of what I've predicted for matchday 13. My 2 teams to score 3 goals, both come in the last fixtures on their respective days. West Brom to score 3 against QPR, Leeds to score 3-1 at Stoke. Maybe my slight surprise is Preston to beat Southampton 1-0. And though I've been pretty optimistic with goals this season, I've gone for 5 away teams to draw a blank this midweek. But those are just my predictions. Do you agree or disagree with them? Let me know down in the comments below. And as always, please do get involved and give us your predictions too. If you beat or match my score, you'll get a shout out in the next recap, which will be on Thursday for another big weekend of fixtures. If you enjoyed this one though, please do put a thumbs up on it. Keep your eyes peeled later in the week for another Premier League preview and more predictions there, as Luton travel to Aston Villa. And also a very quick thank you for so many of you who have come over and supported the FM channel. Both on YouTube and Twitch, I've seen a number of the regular names from here. So thank you for coming and getting involved in that. FM24 is out and you guys have made it very special. But a massive thank you for watching as always. It's been great to have you along. I hope you enjoy whatever game you're going to or watching this midweek. And I'll see you again on Thursday for matchday 14.